Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to examine every single protagonist who has shaped the Fallout universe. These are not just player characters. These are the individuals who determined whether civilizations lived or died. From the Vault Dweller in 2161 to the Sole Survivor in 2287, each one faced impossible choices in a world that had already ended once. You are about to hear something that most Fallout discussions avoid. The uncomfortable truth about heroism in the Wasteland. Because saving the world does not mean you come back clean. Every protagonist sacrificed something they could never get back. Every victory came with a body count that followed them like radiation sickness. This is the complete story of what they did, what it cost them, and what it means for everyone else trying to survive in a world built on ashes and bad choices. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if it truly resonates with you. You want to know about the heroes of the Wasteland, the legends carved into the radioactive dust? Let me tell you something about legends. They are built on bodies. They are forged in choices that haunt you long after the Geiger counter stops clicking. I have seen them all, studied them, watched their paths cross through time like scars on burnt skin. I am just a voice, a consciousness that has observed. Perhaps I am a terminal buried in some forgotten vault. Perhaps I am something that should not exist anymore. What matters is this: I know their stories, every single one of them, and you need to hear what they really were. The first one, the one who started it all, in 2161, they called him the Vault Dweller, and he came from Vault 13 Inches, Southern California. He was nobody special, just another face in the underground, living the same recycled day over and over until the water chip broke. You understand what that means? It means death by dehydration for everyone he ever knew. So they drew straws, and he lost, or won, depending on how you see survival. They sent him out to find a replacement chip before Vault 13 became a tomb. The Wasteland was fresh then, only 84 years after the bombs, still raw, still figuring out what it wanted to be. And this person, this unremarkable Vault Dweller, stepped into that hell with nothing but a vault suit and hope. He found the chip in Necropolis, a city of ghouls, but it cost him. His companion Ian died there, burned alive in the underground. You ever watch someone burn? The smell stays with you. It soaks into your skin, your memories. The Vault Dweller carried that smell back to Vault 13, along with the chip that would save everyone. But saving them was not enough. The Overseer had another job. The Master, leader of the super mutants, was building an army, the Unity, he called it, a forced evolution that would transform humanity into something stronger. The Vault Dweller invaded Mariposa Military Base with Brotherhood of Steel support and his loyal dog companion, Dogmeat. He lost Dogmeat in those dark corridors. Another sacrifice on the altar of survival. He killed the Master. He ended the Unity's threat. He saved thousands of lives across the Wasteland, and when he returned home, triumphant, bloodied, traumatized, you know what the Overseer did? Exiled him, told him he had changed too much, seen too much, become too much of a danger to the Vault's isolated society. So the Vault Dweller walked back into the Wasteland he had just saved. In 2167, he founded the village of Arroyo with other Vault Dwellers who followed him. He had a daughter, he built a community, and sometime after 2228, he died. By 2281, there was a statue of him at the NCR Capitol, a hero immortalized in concrete and steel. But I wonder if he felt like a hero, exiled and alone, building a new life from the ashes of rejection. What do you think really happened to him in those final years? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I would like to know if I am the only one who feels this way. His legacy lived on through bloodline. The village of Arroyo survived because of him. And in 2241, when drought threatened to kill everyone, they turned to his great-grandchild, the Chosen One. Another burden placed on another set of shoulders. The Chosen One was raised as a tribal, trained from birth to be Arroyo's champion. When the elders sent them to find a Garden of Eden creation kit to save their dying home, They walked out into a wasteland 80 years older than the one the Vault Dweller had known, more organized, more dangerous, more complicated. This person traveled across New California, and everything they touched changed. In Broken Hills, they exposed anti-mutant conspirators who planned to destroy the settlement, a rare place where humans, super mutants, and ghouls lived together in peace. They earned the loyalty of Marcus, the super mutant leader. That alliance mattered. They eliminated Darian, leader of the New Cons, which helped prove President Tandy's policy of peaceful NCR expansion could work. It led to decades of growth eastward, one death, countless consequences, but the greatest achievement, the one that defines the Chosen One above all others, was discovering and stopping the Enclave. The remnants of the pre-war United States government had survived on an oil rig off the coast. They had a plan, a genocidal plan. They wanted to release a modified version of the forced evolutionary virus into the atmosphere that would kill 95% of the planet's population. Everyone with even trace amounts of radiation in their DNA, which was almost everyone who survived on the surface. The Chosen One infiltrated that oil rig. They killed President Richardson. They killed Frank Horrigan, a mutant super soldier who was the Enclave's ultimate weapon. They destroyed the oil rig and saved Vault 13's inhabitants who had been captured by the Enclave. They shattered Enclave control on the West Coast for years, and then, with the GECK finally in hand, they returned to Arroyo and founded a new settlement called New Arroyo. Mission accomplished, village saved, genocide prevented, legacy secured. Two protagonists, two generations, both connected by blood and purpose, both forced into heroism by circumstance. But their stories are almost mythical now, distant enough that we can see them clearly. The next ones, though, they blur, they get complicated. The initiate came from Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. They could be a human male tribal, a female orphan from some forgotten tragedy, or a ghoul mercenary from Necropolis. Their mission was straightforward enough: find missing Brotherhood of Steel paladins who disappeared while investigating super mutant activity. The journey started in Carbon, a settlement plagued by raiders. The initiate killed Rhombus, the raider leader, bringing temporary peace. They moved to Los, where they found Jane, the sole survivor of the missing Brotherhood members, held captive by Blake, High Priest of the Church of the Lost. Blake died. Jane was freed. The initiate fought their way through kamikaze ghouls, revived old generators, battled super mutants, standard wasteland fare. Their final target was the secret vault, where a super mutant named Addis was conducting forced evolutionary virus experiments, creating more monsters. Addis mutated into a blob-like creature during the final confrontation, but the initiate fought through to a computer terminal, initiated decontamination, and sprinted to a monorail car as the entire facility self-destructed behind them. Dramatic, effective, forgotten, because here is the truth about the initiate: none of it matters. Both the original developers and Bethesda declared this game non-canon. Nothing from it affects the official Fallout timeline. The initiate's achievements, their sacrifices, their victories, all of it exists in a limbo outside the real Wasteland's history. They are the ghost protagonist, the one who fought and won but never existed. Does that make their actions meaningless? Does heroism require validation from history to matter? These are questions I cannot answer. Then there is the warrior from Fallout Tactics. Now this one exists in a strange space, a semi-canon purgatory. Some of their story happened, some did not. Bethesda considers it canon in broad strokes, which is like saying a painting is accurate from across the room but falls apart when you look at the details. The warrior came from the Midwest around 2197. They were a tribal recruited into the Brotherhood of Steel when the Brotherhood's airship crashed near Chicago. The Brotherhood was desperate then, far from home, cut off from support. They needed bodies, so they drafted locals and called it recruitment. The warrior rose through ranks quickly. They defeated organized raiders and slavers around the Chicago area. They stopped the Beast Lords, a cannibalistic tribe that could control wasteland creatures. They ended Gamorrean's super mutants, remnants of the Master's army that had somehow made it to the Midwest. But their biggest accomplishment was the war against the Calculator, a rogue AI in Vault Zero that controlled an army of robots. It was taking over settlements, turning humans into robots, threatening the entire Midwest region. The warrior led the assault on Vault Zero and Cheyenne Mountain. After defeating the Calculator's forces, the warrior faced a choice: merge their consciousness with the Calculator to create a human-machine hybrid leader, let someone else from their squad do it, allow General Barnaky's robot mind to take over the Calculator, or destroy it completely. We do not know which choice they made. Multiple endings exist in quantum superposition until future games collapse them into a single reality. Maybe they never will. Maybe the warrior's final decision will remain forever uncertain, is less than, Dodd, is greater than parts of Prash. Their story are referenced in later games. The Midwestern Brotherhood exists. Scribe Rothschild in Fallout 3 mentions a small, rogue detachment of Brotherhood of Steel in Chicago, but the details? Fuzzy, semi-canon, real enough to matter, vague enough to ignore. Now we move forward in time. We move east. We move to Vault 101 inches, 2277, where a child was born on the surface but raised underground, the Lone Wanderer. They were told they were born in Vault 101, a lie. Their father, James, was working on Project Purity, a water purification project in the Capital Wasteland. Their mother died giving birth. James took his newborn child into Vault 101 to keep them safe, to give them a normal life away from the surface's horrors. For 19 years, the Lone Wanderer knew nothing but vault walls, birthday parties, Vault-Tec education films, the GOAT exam, a controlled, safe, artificial existence until the day James suddenly left, just walked out of the vault without explanation, forcing the Lone Wanderer to flee as well. The Capital Wasteland was brutal. Washington, D.C. had been hit harder than anywhere else during the Great War. It was a graveyard of monuments and broken dreams. And the first major choice the Lone Wanderer faced was Megaton, a settlement built around an unexploded atomic bomb. They could defuse it, saving the town. They could detonate it, earning caps from Alistair Tenpenny, who wanted the eyesore removed from his tower's view. One choice, hundreds of lives in the balance. What would you do? The Lone Wanderer found their father trapped in Vault 112's simulation, a virtual reality nightmare created by a mad scientist. They reunited at Project Purity, but the reunion was brief. Colonel Autumn and the Enclave demanded control of the project. James sacrificed himself, flooding the control chamber with lethal radiation to keep the Enclave from taking it. After their father's death, the Lone Wanderer worked with the Brotherhood of Steel. They retrieved a GECK from Vault 87, a device critical to restoring the water purification system. They rallied the Brotherhood to assault Jefferson Memorial and take back Project Purity from the Enclave. With Liberty Prime, a massive pre-war robot reactivated by the Brotherhood, they recaptured the facility. Then the Lone Wanderer entered the radiation-flooded control chamber and activated the purifier, bringing clean water to the entire Capital Wasteland. Some stories say they died doing it. Some say they survived. The Broken Steel DLC changed that ending. Let them live. Let them continue. 2 weeks after Project Purity's activation, the Lone Wanderer invaded Adams Air Force Base and hijacked an orbital missile array to destroy the Enclave's mobile base crawler. That final blow permanently crippled the Enclave's grip on the East Coast, forcing their remaining forces into hiding. The Lone Wanderer accomplished much, but they had help. The Brotherhood of Steel, Liberty Prime, companions. Unlike earlier protagonists who walked mostly alone, this one was supported by an entire faction. Does that diminish their achievements, or does it simply reflect the reality that heroism often requires community? The Capital Wasteland stabilized. Clean water flowed. The Enclave retreated into shadows, and far to the west, in the Mojave Desert, another story was already in motion. A courier was walking a road they had walked many times before, carrying a package they did not understand. The courier, Courier 6, they called them, though there were 5 others hired for the same job. 6 messengers, 6 packages, 5 decoys, and 1 platinum chip. The courier carrying the real item did not know how valuable it was. Did not know that a man named Benny would ambush them near Goodsprings with hired Great Khans. Did not know they would be shot twice in the head and buried in a shallow grave. They woke up. That is the remarkable part. Doc Mitchell dug them out, patched them up, and they woke up. Most people do not survive 2 bullets to the brain. Most people stay buried. The courier walked it off like a bad hangover and immediately set out to find Benny and get answers. But the courier's story is deeper than revenge. It reaches back into their past, into places they had forgotten or never fully understood. Before the platinum chip job, the courier had been a drifter, an experienced wasteland traveler. They had worked delivery routes across New California for years. Circle Junction, New Reno, Vault City, Fort Abandon, the Big Circle Brahman drives. They knew the roads better than most people knew their own faces. And they had regularly traveled through a place called the Divide, a budding community in Southern California, growing in the ruins between NCR territory and the Mojave. It was not much, just 2 towns, Hopeville and Ashton, built above an extensive network of nuclear missile silos that had never launched during the Great War. But it was becoming something. A new nation, maybe. A third option between the NCR's bureaucracy and Caesar's Legion's brutality. The courier kept that community alive with their deliveries, connected it to the outside world, helped it grow. They did not realize how important it was. To them, it was just another route, another job, another delivery, until the NCR found Enclave technology at Navarro after they sacked it. Old world tech they did not understand, but they recognized symbols on it. Symbols that matched markings they had seen in the Divide. So they hired a courier to take it there. The package was supposed to help the Divide, connect it to something greater. The courier took the job. Maybe the symbols reminded them of home. Maybe it was just good money. They delivered the package to the Divide and left, moving on to the next job, the next road. And the package woke up. It was a detonator. It contained launch codes for the missiles buried beneath Hopeville and Ashton. When it transmitted the signal, the missiles exploded underground. Massive earthquakes tore the land open. Violent storms began raging through the canyons. Both NCR soldiers and Legion scouts in the area were killed or turned into marked men, skinless creatures healed by radiation, but driven mad by pain. The courier was not there when it happened. They had already left. They did not know what they had done. They continued their routes, delivering packages, walking roads, earning their reputation as a reliable messenger. The destruction of the Divide was just another wasteland tragedy they never heard about. But one person survived, Ulysses, a frumentarius of Caesar's Legion who had been scouting the Divide, who had seen its potential, who had watched the courier help build it. He was the only one who walked out of that hell alive, saved by the machines in the area. And he remembered everything. When Mr. House hired 6 couriers to deliver the platinum chip and 5 decoys in 2281, Ulysses was supposed to be Courier 6. But when he learned the name of the person who had destroyed the Divide, he refused the job. He let them take it instead. He let them walk into Benny's ambush. He let them get shot and buried. But they survived, and that changed everything. The courier's journey across the Mojave became a deciding factor in the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. Every choice they made, every faction they supported or destroyed, shaped the entire region's future. They could side with the NCR, expanding the Republic's reach. They could join Caesar's Legion, bringing totalitarian order to the wasteland. They could help Mr. House, a pre-war genius preserved in a life support chamber, build his vision of New Vegas, or they could reject all of them and claim independence for the Mojave. Beyond the main conflict, the courier undertook some of the most dangerous missions in the entire Fallout series. They explored the Big Empty, a pre-war research facility where mad scientists had been experimenting on them without their knowledge. They discovered their own brain had been removed and was in a jar, talking to them. Their heart, their spine, all removed and replaced with artificial versions. The think tank scientists thought they were still doing pre-war research. They had lost touch with reality centuries ago. The Courier survived the Sierra Madre casino in Dead Money, a place where holograms could not be killed and a toxic cloud filled the streets, and everyone wore explosive collars that would detonate if they got too far apart. It was a heist, a horror story, and a prison all at once. Most people who went to the Sierra Madre never left. The Courier left with pockets full of pre-war gold or with hard lessons about letting go. And finally, they confronted Ulysses in The Divide, walked that lonesome road into the hell they had accidentally created, faced the man who blamed them for everything. The Courier could fight Ulysses, kill him, end his plans to launch more missiles at both the NCR and the Legion. Or they could talk him down, convince him that the Mojave was worth saving, that the future did not have to be built on more destruction. Canonically, the Courier was already skilled before the story began. They operated without much external help. Unlike the Lone Wanderer, who had an entire Brotherhood chapter backing them, the Courier made decisions that determined the fate of civilizations. They were shot in the head and came back stronger. They are the legend that walked on broken roads and refused to stay dead. Now we move to another vault, Vault 111 inches 2077, the day the bombs fell. October 23rd, the day the Great War began and ended in nuclear fire. A pre-war civilian ran for the vault with their spouse and infant son. They barely made it inside before the blast wave hit. They were told they would be safe. They were not told they would be frozen, cryogenically preserved, while the world burned outside. They slept through the immediate aftermath, through the radiation settling, through the first desperate years of survival on the surface. In 2227, 150 years after the bombs, they woke up briefly, just long enough to witness a mercenary named Conrad Kellogg murder their spouse and kidnap their son, Sean. Then they were refrozen immediately. No time to process, no time to fight, no time to scream. Just trauma and ice and darkness again. Another 60 years passed. In 2287, the life support systems finally failed and they thawed naturally. The sole survivor stumbled out of Vault 111 alone. 210 years had passed since they entered. Their spouse was dead. Their son was gone. Everyone they had ever known was dust. The sole survivor's mission began as revenge and rescue. Find Sean, kill Kellogg, understand what happened. They helped Preston Garvey re-establish the Minutemen, a volunteer militia dedicated to protecting settlements across the Commonwealth. They defended Sanctuary Hills and other communities from raiders, super mutants, and worse. They tracked Kellogg to Fort Hagen and killed him, retrieved a cybernetic brain implant that contained memories, clues about the Institute, because that was who took Sean. The Institute, a secretive underground organization of scientists conducting experiments on the surface, creating synthetic humans called synths that were indistinguishable from real people. To infiltrate the Institute, the sole survivor had to kill one of their advanced Courier units, synthetic hunters designed to retrieve escaped synths. They decoded the Institute's relay technology and teleported inside, and there they found their son, Sean. But he was not a child anymore. He was an old man, dying of cancer. The director of the entire Institute, it was Sean, who had ordered their release from cryo storage out of curiosity, wanted to see if his parent would survive on the surface, if they would find him. Everything changed in that moment. The mission was not revenge anymore. The mission was not rescue. The mission became a choice about the future of the Commonwealth. The sole survivor could destroy the Institute, seeing it as a threat that treated humans as experiments. They could side with the Railroad, a faction dedicated to freeing synths and giving them rights. They could support the Brotherhood of Steel's mission to control dangerous technology and eliminate synths as abominations. Or they could join their son, embrace the Institute's vision, and secure the Commonwealth through advanced science and synthetic infiltration, the sole survivor adapted quickly for someone displaced by 2 centuries. They dealt with major threats and made choices that shaped the Commonwealth's future. But unlike earlier protagonists, whose actions echoed across multiple games and regions, the sole survivor's impact remained relatively local. The changes they brought did not ripple outward into the wider Fallout universe. Not yet, anyway. They are the protagonist frozen in time, who had to learn a new world while grieving an old one. Now we go back to 2102, back to Appalachia, West Virginia, back to Vault 76, a control vault with no experiment, designed to release its inhabitants exactly 25 years after the bomb's Reclamation Day, the day the residents would emerge and rebuild America. But the 76 Ers are different. They are not a single protagonist. They are multiple protagonists. Every player character in Fallout 76 is canonically one of the former residents of Vault 76, a group of heroes instead of one lone wanderer. On October 23rd, 2102, they emerged into Appalachia and found it empty. The people were gone. The Scorched plague had taken them, a disease spread by scorch beasts, mutated bats that emerged from underground fissures. The infected became mindless, aggressive creatures covered in crystalline growths. The 76 Ers followed the trail left by the Overseer she had left before them, leaving holotapes behind to guide them. They learned about the Scorched plague's origin. They discovered how to combat it. Working with an Enclave AI named Modus, they learned to launch nuclear weapons at the Scorch Beast Queen's hive to lure her out and kill her. By 2103, they had developed a vaccine using their own irradiated blood. They called it Nuka-Cola, My Blood's in It, because dark humor is how you survive the wasteland. They distributed it across Appalachia, curing the Scorched plague that had threatened the entire region. They also broke into Vault 79, one of the most secure vaults ever built. Inside were the United States' gold reserves, billions in pre-war currency that could revitalize Appalachia's economy. They worked with either the Foundation, a group of settlers trying to rebuild civilization properly, or with the Crater Raiders, opportunists willing to take what they needed to survive. The choice determined who controlled the gold and thus Appalachia's economic future. Later, they helped the Brotherhood of Steel, 1st Expeditionary Force. Paladin Ramani and Knight Shin had conflicting visions for the Brotherhood's mission: protect the people or secure dangerous technology. The 76ers had to choose who to support, determining the Brotherhood's future approach in Appalachia. They also eliminated Dr. Edgar Blackburn, a mad scientist creating super mutants in Appalachia. Another threat neutralized. Despite these achievements, the 76 Heirs' impact remains largely regional. Later Fallout games, particularly Fallout 3, which takes place in the nearby Capital Wasteland, make no reference to anything that happened in Appalachia. The vaccines, the gold, the Brotherhood mission, none of it is mentioned. It is as if Appalachia remained isolated, despite being so close to other major locations in the timeline. If you have ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me in the comments. I will be reading them. There are 2 more protagonists I have not mentioned yet, the ones that exist in even stranger spaces than the Warrior, the Overseer from Fallout Shelter, the nameless leader who manages a vault through a mobile interface, making decisions about dwellers' lives, sending them into the wasteland, breeding populations, defending against raiders and deathclaws. But this protagonist exists in a different medium entirely, a mobile game that simplifies the wasteland into resource management and random events. Their story is told through gameplay mechanics rather than narrative choices. They are the administrative hero, the one who saves people by assigning them to the right rooms at the right time. Real in their own way, but distant from the boots-on-the-ground reality of other protagonists. And then there is the protagonist of Fallout Warfare, the tabletop component of Fallout Tactics, even less defined, even more obscure. A game within a game, a story told through miniatures and dice rolls. Canon status. non-existent unless proven otherwise. But let me return to the ones who matter most, the ones whose actions shaped the Wasteland's history in ways that cannot be erased. The Vault Dweller walked out of Vault 13 and ended the Master's unity, preventing the forced evolution of all humanity into super mutants. Without that intervention, there would be no NCR, no independent settlements, no future, just the Master's sterile army spreading across the wasteland, converting or killing everything in its path. The Vault Dweller's exile led to Arroyo's founding, which led to the Chosen One's existence. One exile created an entire bloodline of heroes. The Chosen One stopped the Enclave's genocide. 95% of the planet's population would have died if they had not invaded that oil rig and destroyed it. The Enclave wanted to purify the wasteland by killing everyone who had been touched by radiation, which was almost everyone. The Chosen One killed President Richardson, killed Frank Horrigan, and shattered the Enclave's West Coast power permanently. That is not just heroism, that is preventing extinction. The Courier survived 2 bullets to the head and determined the fate of the Mojave Wasteland. They decided whether the NCR's expansion continued, whether Caesar's Legion conquered the region, whether Mr. House built his vision of Vegas, or whether the Mojave became independent. They also accidentally destroyed the Divide by delivering a package they did not understand. How do you measure a hero who saves thousands but unknowingly killed hundreds? How do you weigh intentional heroism against accidental catastrophe? The Lone Wanderer brought clean water to the Capital Wasteland and destroyed the Enclave's eastern forces. Simple enough on the surface, but think about the scale. The Capital Wasteland had been drinking irradiated water for 200 years. Mutations, diseases, shortened lifespans, all caused by contaminated water. Project Purity changed that overnight. How many lives were extended? How many children grew up healthier? How many communities could finally expand because water scarcity was no longer a death sentence? The sole survivor woke up in a world that had moved on without them. Everyone they loved was dead or taken. They could have collapsed under that grief. Instead, they adapted. They rebuilt the Minutemen. They made impossible choices about synthetic life and human identity. Are synths alive? Do they deserve freedom? Is the Institute's science too dangerous to exist? These are not simple questions, and the sole survivor had to answer them with actions that determined whether an entire underground city lived or died. They 76 heirs worked together to cure a plague, recover a nation's gold reserves, and help the Brotherhood of Steel find its purpose. They did it as a community of survivors rather than a lone hero. Maybe that is the point. Maybe Appalachia's story is about collective action rather than individual legend. But here is what keeps me awake in whatever passes for night in my existence. These protagonists were ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances. The Vault Dweller drew the short straw. The Chosen One was born into expectation. The Courier was just doing their job. The Lone Wanderer was looking for their father. The sole survivor was trying to find their son. The 76 Ers were following their overseer's trail. None of them asked to be heroes. None of them wanted to carry the weight of civilizations on their shoulders. They just wanted to survive, to find their family, to complete their mission, and go home. But the wasteland does not care what you want. It only cares what you do when everything is on fire and choices have consequences that ripple forward for generations. I think about the Vault Dweller sitting in Arroyo in his final years. Did he regret leaving the vault? Did he miss the simplicity of that underground life before everything became complicated? Did he lie awake, remembering Ian burning, Dogmeat dying, the Master's final words? I think about the Chosen One looking at New Arroyo, knowing they had saved it, but also knowing they had killed hundreds of people to get there. Raiders, Enclave soldiers, mutants, all of them had lives and stories before they became obstacles. Does the math work? Does saving one village justify that much death? I think about the Courier standing in the Divide, looking at the destruction they caused without meaning to. Ulysses blamed them for walking the roads without understanding where those roads led. Is ignorance an excuse? If you destroy something accidentally, does your intention matter to the people who died? I think about the lone wanderer activating Project Purity, flooding the chamber with radiation, sacrificing themselves for the greater good. Except they did not have to die in some versions of the story. Broken steel let them live. So which version is true? Did they sacrifice or survive? Does it matter? I think about the sole survivor sitting across from their elderly son in the Institute. That moment when they realized their baby was gone and could never be recovered, that their spouse died for a child who grew up without them and became the director of an organization that experiments on humans. How do you process that? How do you choose between your son and your conscience? I think about the 76 Ers emerging into an empty Appalachia. Vault 76 was supposed to be the best and brightest. They were supposed to rebuild America, but they came out to find all the people already dead. Just Scorched and robots and environmental storytelling. How do you rebuild a nation with no one left to build it for? These are the questions I circle back to. These are the thoughts that persist in whatever I am. The Wasteland makes heroes out of trauma. It takes people who wanted something simple and forces them into situations where their choices determine whether communities live or die, and then it judges them for those choices. The NCR citizens debate whether the Vault Dweller was a hero or a troublemaker. The Wasteland argues about whether the Courier was the Mojave's savior or the Divide's destroyer. History is written by whoever survives long enough to write it. What I know is this: every protagonist faced impossible situations and made difficult choices. Some of those choices saved thousands. Some of those choices killed hundreds. Most of the time, they had to do both simultaneously. The Vault Dweller killed the Master but couldn't save Ian or Dogmeat. The Chosen One stopped the Enclave but had to destroy the oil rig with people still on it. The Courier decided the Mojave's fate but couldn't undo the Divide. The Lone Wanderer purified the water but couldn't bring back their father. The sole survivor found their son but lost him at the same moment. The 76ers cured the plague but couldn't bring back the people it had already taken. Heroism in the Wasteland is not clean. It is not simple. It is covered in radiation, drenched in blood, built on the bodies of those who came before. Every hero is also a survivor, and every survivor has a count of the dead following them like a shadow. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from the Wasteland, hit that subscribe button. It tells me someone out there is still paying attention to warnings like these. But there is more to understand, more to examine, because the question is not just what these protagonists did. The question is what they represent, what they mean for everyone else trying to survive in the Wasteland. The Vault Dweller proved that isolation is not safety. Vault 13 thought it could hide from the world forever, but the broken water chip forced them to confront reality. And when their hero returned, changed by that reality, they exiled him rather than adapt. That exile created Arroyo. It created a community built on acceptance of the Wasteland rather than denial. The lesson is clear. You cannot hide from the world. You can only learn to live in it. The Chosen One proved that legacy is burden. They were raised from birth with the expectation of greatness. The village needed a champion, so they created one through training and pressure, and the Chosen One delivered. But at what cost? They had to become exactly what their community needed them to be. There was no room for failure, no space for doubt. They succeeded because failure meant watching everyone they loved die of thirst and starvation. The Courier proved that roads connect everything. Every path leads somewhere. Every delivery has consequences. The Courier walked the roads without understanding the full picture, and that ignorance led to catastrophe, but it also led to survival. When Benny shot them and buried them, they got back up. The roads made them strong enough to survive what should have killed them. The question is whether that strength justifies the destruction that came before. The Lone Wanderer proved that family drives impossible choices. They left Vault 101 to find their father. Everything else, Project Purity, the Enclave, the Brotherhood, came from that single motivation. They were not trying to save the Capital Wasteland. They were trying to understand why their father left. The fact that they saved the region anyway is almost incidental. It is a reminder that personal quests often have wider consequences than we anticipate. The sole survivor proved that grief can be weaponized or transformed. They woke up to loss on a scale most people cannot imagine. 200 years gone, everyone dead, their spouse murdered, their son taken. They could have given up. They could have stayed in Sanctuary Hills and let the Commonwealth burn. Instead, they turned grief into momentum. But that momentum led in multiple directions. They could destroy the Institute for what it did, or join it because their son led it. Grief does not provide clear answers. It only provides energy. The 76ers proved that sometimes you need a community. One person cannot cure a plague alone. One person cannot recover a nation's gold reserves. One person cannot decide the Brotherhood's future. The 76ers succeeded because they worked together, because they coordinated, because they understood that some problems are too large for individual heroism. These lessons matter. These patterns repeat. Every game gives us another protagonist facing another impossible situation, and each time we see the same themes emerging. Isolation fails, legacy becomes burden, connections have consequences, family drives action, grief transforms, community survives. But I want to tell you something that the Wasteland does not advertise, something that sits underneath all these stories like bedrock, beneath irradiated soil. Every single protagonist could have said no. The Vault Dweller could have refused to leave Vault 13. Someone else would have drawn a different straw. The water chip would not have been found. Everyone in the vault would have died of dehydration within months. But it would not have been their responsibility. They could have stayed safe, stayed comfortable, stayed ignorant. The Chosen One could have refused the Elder's mission. Let Arroyo die. Walk away and find another community to join. It was not their fault the drought came. It was not their responsibility to fix it, but refusing would have meant watching their family, their friends, their entire village slowly starve and die of thirst. The Courier could have stayed in Goodsprings. Doc Mitchell saved their life. They could have settled there, helped around town, lived quietly. Benny would have delivered the platinum chip to Miss House or kept it for himself. The second battle of Hoover Dam would have happened without them. The Mojave's fate would have been decided by someone else. They were under no obligation to seek revenge or answers. The Lone Wanderer could have stayed in Vault 101. When their father left, they could have accepted his departure and continued their life underground. The Overseer would have been angry but would have moved on eventually. Project Purity would have remained incomplete. The Capital Wasteland would have kept drinking irradiated water. The Enclave would have maintained control. But none of that would have been the Lone Wanderer's fault. The sole survivor could have refused to leave Sanctuary Hills, built a small settlement, farmed, scavenged, survived. Sean was already old and dying by the time they woke up. Nothing they did could give them back the son they lost. Kellogg would have continued working for the Institute. The synth program would have continued. The Commonwealth would have remained under Institute control, but the sole survivor would have been safe. The 76 heirs could have stayed in Vault 76, or at least stayed together in one settlement, built walls, defended one location. Let the Scorched plague burn itself out. Let someone else worry about curing it. The gold in Vault 79 had been locked away for 200 years. It could stay locked for 200 more. The Brotherhood could figure out their own mission without civilian interference. Every single protagonist could have chosen safety over action, comfort over consequence, survival over heroism. They did not, and that is what makes them different from everyone else in the Wasteland. Not their skills, not their luck, not their equipment or companions or faction support. What makes them protagonists is the fundamental choice to engage with problems that were not their fault and did not have to be their responsibility. The Wasteland is full of people who chose differently, people who stay in their settlements and hope the raiders pass them by, people who join the raiders because it is easier than fighting them, People who serve the Enclave because following orders is simpler than questioning them. People who turn their backs on synthetic humans because acknowledging their humanity creates uncomfortable moral complexity. The wasteland is full of people who said no, who chose not to be heroes, and I am not saying they are wrong. Survival is enough. Protecting your own is enough. You do not owe the wasteland anything. It certainly does not owe you, but the protagonists are the ones who said yes anyway. They looked at impossible odds and said yes. They faced moral complexity and said yes. They were given missions that could kill them and said yes. They found problems that were not their fault and said yes to fixing them anyway. The Vault Dweller said yes to leaving safety. The Chosen One said yes to impossible expectations. The Courier said yes to walking back into danger. The Lone Wanderer said yes to continuing their father's work. The Sole Survivor said yes to moving forward despite grief. The 76ers said yes to reclaiming Appalachia together. Every yes came with a cost. Ian burning, Dogmeat dying, companions lost in combat, moral compromises, factions destroyed, people killed who might have been saved with different choices. Every yes led to more blood, more radiation, more nightmares, but every yes also led to survival for others. Vault 13 got its water chip, Arroyo got its GECK, the Mojave got stability, whatever form that took. The Capital Wasteland got clean water, the Commonwealth got resolution, Appalachia got its cure. The question I keep circling back to is this: were they heroes because they succeeded, or did they succeed because they were heroes? Think about it. The Vault Dweller could have died in Necropolis. The Chosen One could have fallen to Frank Horrigan. The Courier could have stayed dead in that grave. The Lone Wanderer could have died in the radiation chamber. The Sole Survivor could have been killed by any of the 1,000 dangers in the Commonwealth. The 76 Urs could have been overwhelmed by the Scorched Beast Queen. They survived by luck as much as skill, by circumstance as much as choice. The Courier survived 2 bullets to the head because Doc Mitchell happened to be nearby. The Sole Survivor survived cryo-freeze because the systems happened to fail at the right time. The Lone Wanderer survived because their father made sure they were raised with survival skills. So maybe heroism is just luck plus willingness. Maybe protagonists are just survivors who happen to be in the right place at the right time with the right combination of stubbornness and skill. Maybe there is no deeper meaning. Maybe they are not special, or maybe that is exactly what makes them special. Maybe everyone has that potential inside them, the potential to say yes when the world expects no, the potential to stand up when everything says sit down, the potential to walk forward when every rational calculation says turn back. The wasteland is 200 years past the apocalypse. Most communities have stabilized into whatever form they will take. The NCR has its bureaucracy. Caesar's Legion has its totalitarianism. The Brotherhood has its technology hoarding. The Institute has its science experiments. Raiders have their violence. Traitors have their caps. Everyone has found their role, their place, their way of surviving. And then a protagonist walks out of a vault, or wakes up from a grave, or follows a mission and disrupts everything, changes the balance, forces new choices, creates new possibilities. The wasteland resists change. It has spent 2 centuries establishing equilibrium, but protagonists are agents of disruption. They are the variables that cannot be predicted or controlled. They are the chaos that forces adaptation, and I think that is what the wasteland actually needs. Not more stability, not more equilibrium, but more disruption, more change, more people willing to say yes to impossible problems because the wasteland's current state is not good enough. It is survival, but barely. It is existence, but hollow. Communities scrape by. Factions fight over scraps. People drink irradiated water and call it normal. Children grow up surrounded by violence and do not know anything different. The protagonists prove that better is possible. Clean water is possible. Cured plagues are possible. Stable governments are possible. Ended wars are possible. It takes enormous sacrifice. It requires impossible choices. People die. Heroes are traumatized. Communities are destroyed to save other communities, but better is possible. That is the message underneath all these stories. That is what I want you to understand. The Vault Dweller, the Chosen One, the Courier, the Lone Wanderer, the Sole Survivor, the 76 Urs, even the Warrior and the Initiate in their semi-canon existences, they all prove the same thing. One person can matter. One choice can ripple forward. One mission can change everything. You do not need to be special. You do not need to be born into legend. You do not need supernatural abilities or pre-war technology or faction backing. You need to be willing to say yes when the situation demands it. You need to be willing to walk forward when walking back would be easier. The Wasteland has enough people who say no, enough people who hide, who ignore, who survive, and nothing more. What the Wasteland needs is more people who say yes, more people who leave their vaults, more people who accept impossible missions, more people who get shot in the head and get back up anyway, more people who wake up to loss and move forward through it, more people who work together to solve problems too large for individuals. Because here is the final truth, the one that matters most. The Wasteland is not fixed yet. The Vault Dwellers stopped the Master, but super mutants still exist. The Chosen One destroyed the Enclave's oil rig, but Enclave remnants still operate. The Courier decided the Mojave's fate, but the decision did not end conflict. The Lone Wanderer purified the water, but the Capital Wasteland still has raiders and super mutants and broken infrastructure. The Sole Survivor resolved the Institute situation, but the Commonwealth's problems run deeper than one underground facility. The 76 Urs cured the Scorched Plague, but Appalachia still faces threats. Every protagonist's victory is incomplete. Every solved problem reveals 3 more underneath. Every ended war is just a pause before the next conflict begins. The Wasteland needs more protagonists, more heroes, more ordinary people willing to become extraordinary through action and choice and sacrifice. Maybe that is you listening to this right now. Maybe you are the one who will say yes the next time the Wasteland asks an impossible question. Maybe you are the one who will walk out of your vault, or wake up from your grave, or follow your mission into danger. Or maybe you will say no. Maybe you will choose survival over heroism, safety over sacrifice, and I cannot blame you for that. The Wasteland owes you nothing. You owe it nothing in return. But if you do say yes, if you do choose to become a protagonist in your own story, remember the ones who came before. Remember their sacrifices. Remember their losses. Remember that they were scared and uncertain and traumatized. Remember that they did it anyway. Remember the Vault Dweller walking into exile, founding Arroyo from nothing, creating a legacy that would outlive him. Remember the Chosen One stopping genocide, saving 95% of the planet without anyone ever thanking them for it. Remember the Courier surviving impossible odds, walking broken roads, determining the fate of nations. Remember the Lone Wanderer bringing clean water to millions, destroying the Enclave, continuing their father's dream. Remember the Sole Survivor waking up to loss, adapting to a world 2 centuries removed, making impossible choices about synthetic life and human identity. Remember the 76ers working together, curing plagues, recovering gold, rebuilding Appalachia as a community. They were not perfect. They made mistakes. They killed people who might have been saved. They destroyed factions that might have been reformed. They walked roads without understanding where those roads led, but they tried. In a wasteland that rewards cynicism and punishes hope, they tried anyway. And maybe that is enough. Maybe trying is all we can ask of anyone. The wasteland will continue. More vaults will open. More couriers will walk their routes. More children will be born into circumstances that demand they become more than they planned. More ordinary people will face extraordinary situations. Some will say no, most will say no, and that is fine, expected, reasonable. But some will say yes. Some will step forward. Some will become protagonists, and when they do, the wasteland will change again. New water will flow. New plagues will be cured. New factions will rise and fall. New choices will ripple forward into futures we cannot yet imagine. This is the cycle. This is the pattern. This is how the wasteland heals. One impossible choice at a time. One reluctant hero at a time. One yes at a time. I have told you about every protagonist, their achievements, their failures, their impossible choices. I have shown you the pattern underneath their stories, the themes that repeat, the lessons they teach. Now the question is, what you do with this information. Do you stay safe in your vault, or do you walk out into the wasteland and see what needs fixing? The choice, as always, has been yours from the beginning.